Hi again, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of IndyCar. Those of you who've been following the show today will know that there was a massive problem. And the massive problem was 4 minutes before I went on air this morning, I got news from Dr. Mark McNaught, who's a constitutional expert, that the Scottish legislation, which is currently on the databases of the United Kingdom's computer systems, appeared to be basically being erased, being made redundant. Now, Mark is a respected expert, and I, of course, would trust his opinion on a matter like this. And I had to decide, based on the value of this news and the fact that this was really something which needed to be in the public domain straight away, whether to include it in the show or not. And I decided that I would broadcast the news straight away within 4 minutes of hearing it. Now that, obviously, is not enough time to verify the story fully. But what actually had happened was Mark had read this legislation and he had clicked on the hyperlinks associated with each piece of legislation, which will tell the reader of that hyperlink what the status is of that particular legislation, whether it is defunct, whether it's still active, whether there are changes planned to it. The problem is that some of the phraseology that is used to describe old defunct laws, things from way back in the Middle Ages which are no longer used, can also be used to describe acts for which there are no plans to change them. So, after this massive piece of information was put out there on IndyCar, caused a massive stir, people were basically having heart attacks and rushing out to to protest in the streets. Mark came back to me and said he had made a mistake. He'd misread this, and it wasn't, in fact, what it appeared to be. So I retracted the story straight away as quickly as I could, made an apology to everybody. So people who have come on to IndyCar today and seen the aftermath of this, I apologise for that. However, I needed to correct that straight away. But out of the mess that happened today and the chaos of this false alarm, if you like, is the fact that should the United Kingdom decide to take some kind of draconian action, we need to be able to react really quickly. And today showed just how fast people were prepared to react when the chips are down. So it reminded me, if any of us need reminding, of the stakes that we're playing for. And the fact that we all, including myself, need to be very careful about fact checking. Mark McNaught has issued a public apology today for his mistake, which I think, given the circumstances, is exactly the right thing to do. We all make mistakes. This was a big one. However, I have made a lot of huge mistakes in IndyCar over the years, and I've always tried to correct them and own up to them if we make them. The point is, nobody in this movement is perfect, and we will always make mistakes now and again. But if we are always transparent and own up to them, then people can trust us, and that is what I'm trying to re-establish here today, is to let you know that this was just an honest mistake. And even an expert like Mark, who reads this kind of legalese in all sorts of different countries in different languages, can make a mistake. However, one part of the programme which got chopped with the rest, which was a real shame, was the second item of news on that bulletin, which is that Skyrora, the Scottish rocket company, launched its second test flight on the 11th of July this year in the Eastern Highlands of Scotland, and did a fully successful test into the upper troposphere. Now, the upper troposphere, for those of you who are not scientific, is the bottom part of the atmosphere where all the clouds are, and it's the top bit of that before you go into what's known as the stratosphere, which is about 20 miles up. So this was a large sounding rocket, something about 2 or 3 meters in length, carrying a whole bunch of instruments which are being tested for their new launcher. Now, their new launcher is going to be designed to launch satellites. So at the moment they have to fly a lot of experimental packages to make sure that they can stand the rigours of flight, and also for the launch crews to learn the practice of safe launching. This is in conjunction with the Scottish Air Traffic Control Centre at Prestwick, which has to suspend flights before launches like this take place, and the United Kingdom Space Agency, who coordinate efforts like this across the country. So Skyrrower are pressing onwards. Orbex, which is the other Scottish company, which is in the space race, if you want to call it that, in Scotland, to be the first Scottish indigenous rocket company to put a payload into space or into orbit, depending on which way you look at it. Space can be anything above what's known as the Kármán limit, which is basically above the top of the Earth's atmosphere. Doesn't necessarily have to go into orbit, but to be outside of the atmosphere means it is a spaceflight, even if it comes straight back down again. These are known as ballistic flights, and these are the kind of things which Skyrrower will do first of all before developing any kind of satellite launch capability. Orbex have a similar kind of ambition, and they are also wanting to launch satellites over the North Pole from Scotland. Having said all of that, the mini space race in Scotland to be the first Scottish company to launch a space package or a satellite is not limited just to here. In fact, there's now a Scottish and English space race, because there's now a plan for a space launch complex in Cornwall. And Cornwall's local authority has teamed up with Richard Branson's second space company, which is called Virgin Orbital, if I get it right. I think it's Virgin Orbital. And Virgin Orbital does something rather unusual. They take a rocket which is about 1.5 meters in diameter and about, well, I'm guessing, it looked to me to be somewhere in the region of about 10 to 15 meters in length, and they strap that underneath the wing of one of Virgin Atlantic's old 747 jet airliners. The jet airliner takes off from a conventional runway somewhere in Cornwall, flies out over the sea up to a very high altitude, somewhere about 40,000 feet, releases the rocket. The rocket then fires its engines and carries the payload into space, and the 747 returns back to the airport. Now, it sounds like a terrific idea in practice, and it is a good idea. An air-launched rocket like that saves a lot of expensive rocket fuel getting up above a lot of the atmosphere. The problem is that the local people in Cornwall are not happy about the idea of a jumbo jet with a large rocket, which is full of highly explosive propellants, flying over their houses in case there's an accident and this thing goes off or falls off the plane. So there have been a number of complaints and objections, and there is even, I'm told, a council tax strike going on in Cornwall near where this spaceport is being planned. However, with the might of Virgin Orbital behind them, Cornwall has got quite a lot of, well, punching power. It's got a lot of money being put into this, whereas the two Scottish entries into the space programme, as it were, in the UK, are really bootstrapping themselves from first principles to building their rockets. Orbex, I have to say, are quite far ahead at the moment. They're the first company I've seen which is producing a 3D printed rocket motor. So this is the engine bell actually being manufactured by a computer-driven 3D printer which prints in metal. Very unusual way to do things. It's becoming the way that rockets are being built now. So the Scottish space programme is moving on apace at the moment, and I look forward to the days when I can go and observe a launch and report on it. I do have some movie footage of this rocket launch, which has kindly been given to me by the Skyrrower team, and I'm hoping to be able to broadcast that in a report, perhaps on Scotland at 7, perhaps, if not this week, maybe next week. So I'll talk to you later on when I know a little bit more about that. But that was the good news today, okay? Despite the false alarm about Scotland's laws disappearing, they are in fact, and this is actually quite reassuring, Scotland's laws in the database in the UK of all of the corpus, it's the body of laws in the United Kingdom, Scotland's laws are separate from England's laws, and they always have been. And it's impossible, as far as I understand it, for the English government to repeal any Scottish laws, because the two systems are entirely separate. Anything that is decided by the devolved administration in a legal format like that cannot be changed by the English government. The only way they can shut it down is to shut down devolution. That they do have power over. So the biggest threat, other than, apart from this business of laws being made to disappear, cannot happen, but the entire Parliament being made to close can happen, and that is the real danger of remaining a part of the UK after Brexit. So that was the news today. Apologies for the mess that this morning became. But let's learn from this and remember that the laws of Scotland are protected under the Treaties of Union. They were incorporated as one of the conditions that Scottish law would always remain separated from England, could not be overridden by English laws. That's a very fundamental thing. If ever that was broken, then the union would be over, because that would be a fundamental breach of the conditions of the treaty, and we could just walk away. We wouldn't even need to have a vote about it. But they aren't being breached. The only way we can be stopped from using these laws and from running our country according to Scottish laws like that would be if devolution is repealed. And if that happens, then we are definitely in a position where we have to leave the UK, because otherwise Scotland's future as an independent, distinct country would be at an end. We would be absorbed into the 51st state of the United States, which is what the United Kingdom is destined to become after Brexit. That's it for tonight. Have a great evening. Sorry about the mix-up today. Back to normal tomorrow, and I'll see you again on IndyCar tomorrow. Bye for now.